My name is Serena Calloway. I'm 29 years old. And on the night my husband's company celebrated its biggest contract in 5 years, his father stood up in front of 200 colleagues and business partners and told the room I was a liability. That I was dragging his son down. That the smartest thing my husband ever did was almost not marrying me. My husband sat right there and said nothing. When I finally spoke, my husband grabbed my wrist and told me to sit down, in front of everyone. So I picked up my phone and sent one message. Are you still in the city tonight? The reply came in under a minute. Always. What do you need? I typed back 2 words. Come here. 20 minutes later, the room changed. But let me start from the beginning, because none of it makes sense without it. I met my husband 3 years ago at a coffee shop near the financial district. Not romantic at all. He bumped into me and knocked my laptop bag off my shoulder and then spent 5 minutes apologizing while I told him it was fine. He had this energy about him, warm and slightly chaotic, like someone who moved through life a little faster than everyone else. We ended up talking for 2 hours that day. About nothing important. About everything. His name was Conrad, and from the first week, I knew he was different. He called when he said he would. He remembered small things. He showed up, not in grand gestures, but in quiet, consistent ways that felt more real than anything I'd experienced before. By month 3, I knew I was in love with him. By month 6, I knew I wanted to build something with him. But somewhere in those early conversations, I made a decision. He had asked about my family one evening. We were sitting on my apartment floor eating takeout, and he asked it so simply, so genuinely, that I almost told him everything. I got as far as, my mother passed away when I was 12 before I stopped. And then I said the rest differently than it actually was. I said my father and I were estranged. That I didn't have much family. That I'd built my life on my own. It wasn't entirely untrue. My father and I had gone through years of distance after my mother died. He buried himself in work, and I learned to be self-sufficient in ways I probably shouldn't have had to be at that age. But by the time I met Conrad, my father and I had rebuilt something. Something quiet and strong. He was proud of me. I was proud of him. I just didn't tell Conrad who he was, because I wanted Conrad to want me, not what came with me, not my last name, not the connections, not any of it. I had watched too many people in my life get treated like a door to somewhere else. I didn't want to be a door. I wanted to be a person. So I let Conrad fall in love with Serena Calloway the woman, not Serena Calloway the daughter of. My father understood. He even respected it in his way. He told me once, "You'll know when the time is right," and I believed him. Conrad proposed 8 months later on a Tuesday, which was somehow perfect for us. No grand setup, no audience, just the 2 of us in the kitchen after dinner, him nervous in a way I'd never seen before, me crying before he even finished the question. I said yes before he got to the end of it. We got married 6 months after that. Small ceremony, immediate family only. My father was there, seated quietly in the 2nd row. Just another older man in a nice suit. Conrad's family barely registered him. Why would they? He didn't introduce himself. He was just someone in my small circle, someone vague and unnamed. That was how we kept it. And at first, the marriage was everything I had hoped it would be. Conrad worked hard. He was building something at his company, moving up steadily, and I was proud of him. I had my own work, my own projects, my own life outside of us. We were equals in the best way. We disagreed sometimes, worked through it, came out the other side closer. I felt like we were doing it right. His family was another story. His father was the kind of man who measured everything. He had built his business from scratch, which he reminded everyone of constantly. And he applied that same measuring scale to everyone around him, especially to the people his children brought home. I didn't pass the test. I knew it from the first dinner. His father sat at the head of the table and asked me questions with the specific energy of someone who has already decided the answer. Where did you go to school? What do your parents do? What exactly is your background? His mother was quieter but watched me with the same calibration behind her eyes. His younger brother barely looked at me. His sister, to her credit, was kind, but she was outnumbered. I answered everything honestly. Good school, good work history, independent woman. Not the answer they were looking for. She's not what we pictured for you. his father told Conrad later. Conrad told me this himself, thinking I would find it funny. I laughed. I did not find it funny. Over the next 2 years, it accumulated. Small things at first. Comments about our apartment being too modest. Questions about when Conrad was going to move into a proper neighborhood. Subtle suggestions that he could do better. Meet the right people. Make the right connections if he weren't so focused on his little home life. Meaning me. His father never said it directly to Conrad's face. He was too smart for that. He said it sideways. Through tone, through implication, through the pointed silence after I spoke in family gatherings. And Conrad, for a long time, pushed back. He defended me. He told his father to drop it. He came home frustrated and told me his family didn't know what they were talking about. But over time, something shifted. I don't know exactly when it started. Maybe it was gradual enough that I didn't notice until it had already settled in. But I started to see it in small moments. Conrad would repeat something his father said, not unkindly, but as if the idea had merit. Dad has a point about the networking events. Maybe I should be showing up more. Or he'd come home from a family dinner quieter than usual, and when I asked what was wrong, he'd say nothing in a tone that meant something. Once, after a particularly long evening at his parents' house, he said to me, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm where I'm supposed to be." I asked him what he meant. He said, "Nothing. Forget it." I didn't forget it. I stayed because I loved him. Because I still saw the man I married in there somewhere, behind whatever was happening to him. Because I believed that people go through periods, and that if I held steady, we would come out the other side. I also stayed because I was still holding on to this idea that when the time is right, I would tell him everything, and that it would fix something, rebalance something, that he would understand why I had done it and we would laugh about it someday. I kept waiting for the right moment. Then his father announced the firm anniversary gala. It was a big deal. 200 guests, hotel ballroom, all the partners and clients and people his father had spent 30 years cultivating. Conrad was excited in a way I hadn't seen in a while. He talked about it for weeks, bought a new suit, got his hair cut. He asked me to wear something nice, then immediately said, "Not that it matters. You always look good," which would have been sweet if the context weren't what it was. His family was warmer to me in the weeks leading up to it. His mother texted me to ask about my dress. His father shook my hand at a pre-event dinner and said he was looking forward to having the whole family together. I let myself feel something about that. Something cautiously optimistic. I shouldn't have. The night of the gala was beautiful. I'll say that. The ballroom was all gold light and clean white tablecloths, and the kind of quiet elegance that money buys. I stood next to Conrad and I felt, genuinely, like we were a team. Like this was us, together, showing up for something important. The first 2 hours were fine. Conversation, introductions, the usual social choreography. I met partners I'd heard about for years. I was good at this, actually. I'm good with people. I know how to ask the right questions, how to make someone feel heard, how to move through a room. A few of Conrad's colleagues sought me out specifically after we'd been introduced, which I noted quietly. Conrad's father watched me across the room more than once. I couldn't read his expression. Then came the speeches. His father was third to speak. He talked about the firm's history, about hard work, about legacy. He talked about Conrad, about how proud he was, about the future. And then he paused. He looked out at the room with the easy authority of a man who has never doubted his right to speak, and he said, "But I also want to be honest tonight because this family has always valued honesty. My son is talented. He is hardworking. He has everything he needs to reach the highest levels of this industry. Everything, that is, except the right foundation at home." The room went very quiet. A man needs a partner who elevates him, who understands the world he's operating in, who brings something to the table beyond good intentions. He looked at me, directly, in front of 200 people. Unfortunately, that is not what my son has. It landed like something physical. I felt it in my chest, then in my face. I looked at Conrad. He was staring at the tablecloth. His father kept going. He talked about the importance of networks, of family connections. of the kind of woman who understands the weight of what a man is building. He never said my name. He didn't have to. Everyone in the room knew exactly who he was talking about. The speech wrapped up to polite, uncomfortable applause. I sat very still. My hands were in my lap. I was aware of people near me not looking at me, which is its own kind of looking. Conrad still wasn't looking at me. I leaned over and said quietly, "Are you going to say something?" He picked up his water glass. "Not here," he said. "Then when?" "Serena, please." Something in me went flat, not angry, not even sad, just flat, like a door closing. I stood up. I wasn't planning a scene. I genuinely wasn't. I walked toward the edge of the room, toward a quieter corner near the bar, and I took out my phone. My hands were steady. My breathing was steady. I think that was the part that surprised me most, later. How calm I felt. I pulled up my father's contact and typed, "Are you still in the city tonight?" His reply came in 43 seconds. "Always. What do you need?" I looked up at the room. The speeches had ended. Music had resumed. People were moving around, talking, pretending the last 10 minutes hadn't happened, or maybe they genuinely hadn't registered it the way I had. Conrad was at the table talking to a colleague and not looking for me. I typed back, "Come here. I'll text you the address." He sent a thumbs up. I went back to the table. I sat down. I ate something. I smiled at the colleague Conrad introduced me to. I was completely present and completely somewhere else at the same time. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Outside, I stood up, smoothed my dress, and said to Conrad, "Someone's here for me. Will you come with me for a second?" He looked mildly irritated but followed me. His father was nearby and noticed us moving toward the entrance. He followed, out of what I assume was reflex or curiosity. His mother came too. A few colleagues who had been nearby drifted toward the door as well. I don't know if they sensed something or if it was coincidence. The doors opened. My father walked in. He was in a dark suit, no tie, unhurried. He didn't look around the room the way someone does when they're searching for recognition. He didn't need to. He found me immediately and walked straight to me, and when he got close enough, he put one hand briefly on my shoulder the way he always did and said, "You okay?" I said, "I'm okay. I needed you here." He nodded once. Then he looked at Conrad. Conrad was already pale. Because Conrad knew my father's face. He had seen it in boardrooms, in trade publications, on the news segment that ran 18 months ago about the infrastructure project. He knew exactly who was standing in front of him. He just had never connected the last name. "Sir?" Conrad said, and his voice had dropped about half an octave. "I don't understand." My father looked at him calmly. "She's my daughter." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd heard all evening. Conrad's father had gone very still. The easy authority he carried everywhere had drained out of him somewhere between the door opening and my father saying those 3 words. He looked smaller. Not physically, but in the way a room can make a person small. "I didn't know," Conrad said. He looked at me. "You never told me." "No," I said, "I didn't." "Why?" I looked at him for a moment. The man I had loved for 3 years. The man who had sat at that table 20 minutes ago and said not here when I asked if he would defend me. "Because I wanted to see who you were," I said. Without it, Conrad's father stepped forward. His voice had changed. The speech-giving confidence was gone, and something almost conciliatory had replaced it. "Mr. Calloway, I want to say, I have enormous respect for everything you've built." My father looked at him. Not unkindly, not warmly either. Just directly. "I heard what you said tonight," my father said. Conrad's father stopped. "My daughter told me nothing about this evening. I didn't come here to make a point. I came because she asked me to." He paused. "But I heard what you said, and I want you to understand something." The room had gone very still again. The music felt far away. Everything she has accomplished, she did without my name. She has never used it. She asked me years ago not to make it easy for her because she wanted to earn things on her own. He looked at Conrad's father steadily. And you stood in front of your colleagues tonight and called her insufficient. Conrad's father opened his mouth. I'm not finished, my father said quietly. Not loud, not cruel, just clear. I have been in this industry for 31 years. I know most of the people in this room, and what I know more than anything is that the way a man speaks about someone who cannot defend herself in that moment tells you everything about his character. Complete silence. My father turned to me then, and his expression changed. Something softer. Are you ready to go? He asked. I looked at Conrad one last time. He was looking at me with something I couldn't fully name. Not anger. More like grief, maybe. Like someone realizing in real time what they were losing and understanding it was their own doing. I'm sorry, he said. Serena, I should have said something. I should have. You should have, I agreed. A long time ago, I wasn't cruel about it. I wasn't cold. I said it the way you say something true. His father started to speak again. To me this time, not my father. Serena, I want to apologize. I think tonight I turned to look at him. Just looked. I didn't say anything for a moment. You didn't insult me tonight because you didn't know who my father was, I said. You did it because you thought no one would stop you. He had nothing to say to that. I picked up my clutch from the table nearby where I'd set it down. I said a brief goodbye to Conrad's sister, who had appeared at some point and was standing off to the side looking like she wanted to disappear. She'd always been kind to me, and she deserved that small acknowledgement. My father walked beside me as we crossed the room. I was aware of the silence around us, of the people watching, of the fact that I wasn't shaking. I had expected to feel something overwhelming by then. Relief or sadness, or the complicated collapse of 3 years. Instead, I felt quiet, clear. At the door, I stopped. I didn't turn around all the way, just enough to be heard. You spent 2 years trying to convince Conrad I wasn't enough, I said to the room, to no one specifically. The only thing you were ever right about is that I was in the wrong place. Then I walked out. The night air was cool. My father stood beside me on the sidewalk and we were quiet for a moment. The way we sometimes are. The way we learn to be with each other after years of relearning how to be close. He planned that, he said, not accusatory. Almost amused. No, I said honestly. I just knew if I sent that message, you'd come. And that if you came, I'd know what to do. He nodded slowly. He's not a bad man, I said, about Conrad. I needed to say it out loud to see if I believed it. He just wasn't the man I thought he was. Or maybe he was becoming someone different. I don't know. Those things can both be true, my father said. Yeah. We stood there a little longer. Down the block, a cab was slowing. Somewhere above us, through the hotel windows, I could see the faint movement of the party continuing. I didn't feel bitter. I want to be clear about that. I didn't feel victorious either, which surprised me. I felt the particular kind of tired that comes after you've been bracing for something for a long time and you finally stop. Like putting down a weight you'd stopped noticing you were carrying. The divorce was not dramatic. Conrad didn't fight it. He called me twice in the week after the gala, and both times he said he was sorry, and both times I believed him. And it didn't change anything. Some apologies come too late, not because the person isn't sincere, but because the moment they were needed has already passed. You can't rewind to it. His father never apologized. I didn't expect him to. Some people mistake cruelty for honesty and call it strength. There's nothing to do with people like that except leave them to their smallness. What I kept, after everything, was something I hadn't expected to. I kept the version of myself who had loved someone fully and without protection, who had made a choice to be known as a person first and had meant it. That part wasn't a mistake. It was the truest thing about me in those years. I also kept my father's phone number at the top of my contacts, not because I need rescuing. I want to be clear about that too. But because there is something about knowing that one person in the world will always answer when you call that makes you braver in every other part of your life. more willing to walk into difficult rooms, more willing to walk out of them when the time comes. I walked out, and this time, I wasn't leaving something behind. I was just finally going somewhere I actually wanted to be. I've thought a lot about what I would have done differently, and honestly, not much. I know that sounds like the kind of thing people say when they're performing closure, but I mean it in a quieter way. Not that the marriage wasn't painful, or that I handled everything perfectly, because I didn't. There were nights I stayed silent when I should have spoken. There were conversations I postponed for months because I kept telling myself the timing wasn't right. I let things accumulate that I should have addressed one by one, while they were still small enough to address. That part I own, but the core of it, the decision to walk into that relationship as just myself, without the name, without the context, without any of it, I would make that same decision again. Because what I learned from Conrad and from his father and from that whole slow unraveling is that how people treat you when they think you have nothing to offer is the most honest information you will ever receive about them. You can spend years trying to read someone, or you can just watch what they do when there's nothing in it for them. Conrad's father didn't become cruel that night at the gala. He revealed what had always been there. The speech, the pointed look, the 200 witnesses. That wasn't a moment of weakness or a lapse in judgment. That was a man showing you exactly who he is when he feels safe enough to do it openly. And what I had to reckon with afterward was the harder question. How long had I been watching the warning signs and choosing not to name them? That's the thing about intelligence, real intelligence. Not grades or credentials, but the kind that actually protects you. It requires honesty. Not about other people first, but about yourself. What you're accepting. What you're explaining away. What you're calling patience when it's actually just fear of the answer. I was afraid of the answer for a long time. Conrad changed, or maybe he always had the capacity to become who he became at that table, sitting still while his father dismantled me in front of an audience, and the conditions just finally brought it out. I don't know which version is true, and I'm not sure it matters. What matters is that I eventually stopped waiting for the man I'd fallen in love with to come back and started accepting the man who was actually there. That took more strength than anything else in this story. Not the walkout, not the conversation with his father, the quiet, private moment of deciding to stop hoping for a different reality and deal honestly with the one I was in. My father knew. He always knew, I think, which is why he never pushed. He just made himself available. He answered when I called. He showed up without making it about himself. That is its own kind of wisdom. Knowing that the people you love have to arrive at their own truths in their own time, and that your job isn't to rush them there, but to be steady when they do. I think about that a lot now. About what it means to build character versus perform it. Conrad's father performed authority his whole life. Loud, certain, impressive at a distance. But when the room went silent and my father spoke, what collapsed wasn't just his argument, it was the whole architecture of a man who had never had to be accountable to anyone he couldn't dismiss. That accountability will catch up with you. Not as punishment from somewhere outside yourself, but as the natural consequence of who you chose to be. The people you drove away. The trust you spent carelessly. The version of your son you shaped without realizing what you were building. I walked out that night not because I won something. I walked out because I was finally done carrying the weight of other people's smallness. And the moment I stopped, I realized how long I had been bent under it. That's the only thing I'd want anyone to take from this. Not revenge, not the satisfaction of the reveal, just that. The moment you stop bending. It doesn't come from anger. It doesn't come from waiting for someone else to arrive and validate what you already knew. It comes from honesty. From looking clearly at what is actually in front of you and deciding quietly that you were worth more than this room. I decided, and then I walked out the door.